Thanks for tuning in to another edition of The Wild Robot by Peter Brown. Before we get started, I have noticed that since I've been home, I have been rocking this London sweatshirt a lot more than usual. It just makes me feel good. It makes me think about you guys. It makes me think about London. It makes me think about how lucky we are to be part of this family, even if we are still spread out like this. So, without further ado, I will continue. Chapter 48, The New Foot. Mr. Beaver squinted at Roz's stump. "I've never built a foot before." He stroked his whiskers and muttered to himself. "There are really three problems to solve. The foot needs to have a good grip to the ground, it needs to be durable, and there's the issue of fixing it to the leg. I might have to consult a few friends."
"Will she ever walk again?"
said Bright Bill. "Well, what's that?" Mr. Beaver was lost in thought. Oh, not to worry. You should just sit back and leave everything to me. I love a good challenge." Mr. Beaver plunked into the pond and returned a while later, rolling a large section of a tree trunk. "Say hello to your new foot," he said, slapping the wood with his tail. "Hello, new foot," said Roz. "That's the spirit. This beauty's from one of the hardest trees I ever chewed. I just need to make a few modifications." Mr. Beaver placed the piece of wood next to Roz. He squinted, repositioned the piece, squinted some more. With his claws, he marked different spots on the wood, and then he put his big chompers to work. The beaver chewed and gnawed and carved up that piece of wood, turning it over and over again in his paws. Chit-Chat looked down from the branch and chattered through some of the quiet moments.
"This reminds me of the time I saw a fox catch a lizard by its tail, and somehow the lizard's tail fell off and he got away. And later I saw that same lizard, and he had a new tail, and now Roz is going to get a new foot, and everything's going to be fine!"
The wooden foot took shape, and before long, Mr. Beaver was standing beside a beautiful carving that resembled a foot. He tried to slide it over Roz's stump, but the opening was too small. So he scraped out more wood until it was a perfect fit. "Very good," he said, spitting out a wood chip. "My friends should be arriving any minute, and they'll have a few things we'll need. Oh, and there they are now. I'd like you to meet Bumpkin, Lumpkin, and Rumpkin, but I call them the Fuzzy Bandits." 3 fat raccoons shuffled into the garden, dragging a tangle of vines behind them.
"Good-day,"
said Bumpkin. "Good-day," said Lumpkin. "Good-day," said Rumpkin. You might already know this, reader, but raccoons have very nimble hands. And the Fuzzy Bandits used theirs to skillfully tie the vines around the robot's legs and around her new foot. The vines caught nicely on all the dings and dents and scrapes. Once they were tied good and tight, Mr. Beaver threw back his head and hollered, "Trunk tap! We could use your assistance!" There was a silence, and then 3 quick taps echoed down from the forest canopy. "Ah, that'd be him," said Mr. Beaver, smiling. A very handsome woodpecker swooped into the garden. "You called?" came the woodpecker's musical voice. "Indeed I did. Everyone, this is my woodpecking pal Trunk Tap. Now, Trunky, we need some tree resin, the really sticky stuff. Can you help us out?" "Of course I can," said the woodpecker. "You've got a perfect pine tree right here." Trunk Tap hopped over to the crusty old pine tree and pecked a few deep holes in the bark. Thick, syrupy resin began oozing down the trunk. Mr. Beaver scooped up handfuls of the resin and smeared it all over the wooden foot and the vines until everything was glistening with stickiness. And when the resin dried a short time later, Roz's foot was finished. "This is wonderful," said the robot as she strolled around the garden. "I am as good as new." Mr. Beaver and Trunk Tap and the Fuzzy Bandits went away feeling pretty happy with themselves. They'd done a very nice thing. But it was the first wooden foot any of them had ever made, and within a week the vines were coming undone, and the foot was sliding loose. So they returned, determined to get it right. They found even harder wood and even tougher vines. They experimented with the resin, heating it by the fire, letting it boil and thicken until it became an indestructible glue. They kept tinkering with their design until finally Roz had herself a wooden foot that she could rely on. "Huzzah!" Mr. Beaver tapped his knuckles on the new and improved creation. "I knew we'd get it right." Roz moved slower than before, and she had a slight limp, But she was back to her old self again, and that was a relief to everyone, especially to Bright Bill. I love the lesson in that chapter. Rarely, almost never, the first time we do something is it perfectly right. It is one of those things we practice when we first learn to talk, when we first learn to walk, when we first went to school, when we first wrote our name. It is almost impossible to get it right the first time. It's more important that you just don't give up. We're going to do one more chapter because it's super quick. Chapter 49, The Flyer. With coaching from his mother, Bright Bill was becoming a truly exceptional flyer. He wasn't the biggest or the strongest, but he was the smartest. You see, he and his mother had started studying the flying techniques of other birds. They'd sit for hours and watch how hawks and owls and sparrows and vultures moved through the sky. Then they'd go to the grassy ridge, and Bright Bill would practice what she learned. Soon she was diving and swooping and darting and soaring around the islands. The adult geese frowned at his flying tricks, but the goslings thought he was amazing. Each morning, a gaggle of them would wait in the water for Bright Bill to lead them into the sky, and then, a few hours later, he'd return home to Roz, shaking his tail feathers and honking about his latest airborne adventures.
Mama, the other goslings didn't know that warm air rises, so I found an uplift and we spent the afternoon circling all around and hardly flapped our wings at all. Mama, did you see that lightning storm today? We knew there was trouble when the wind started blowing from the north, so we flew down into the shrubs and waited for the storm to pass. Mama, we tried to fly in formation. We all took turns at the point, but everyone liked following me the best, so I led most of the time.
I told you it was short. I like that chapter too. I like the fact that Bright Bill's the runt. He's not the biggest. He's not the strongest, but he uses his brain. It doesn't help that he also has a robot for a mom who has a supercomputer brain that can teach him all sorts of things. But sometimes you don't need to be the strongest or the fastest. You gotta use this little buddy. Take care of yourself. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.